moms nurture kids and build them up and create them and get them ready for the world. And dads bring them into the world and make them prepared to deal with it. And I think the dad part of that may have been lost some, that the lessons that dads teach their kids and like pushing them and driving them. I don't want to say the hard knocks, but getting them ready for the real world. And you can do that in a tailored, smart way. And I think, the way we used to do it was just kind of like, figure it out, kid. And, just a tough love type thing. And I think we swung the other direction to being too soft and no tough love and not really preparing kids for what's needed out there. I think that's dad's primary responsibility. Moms obviously do it as well, but like you need to see that as a dad, like that's your job. Like you love them and you build them up, but you're also the one that pushes them into the real world and prepares them for it. And I think dads need to focus on that more.
Are you a hardworking dad, juggling family responsibilities while dreaming of building wealth through real estate? Welcome to the Invested Fathers podcast, where we explore how to balance investing and fatherhood. I'm your host, Kenny Johnson, founder of East West Capital. Over the past 5 years, I've been buying real estate to free up my time and secure my family's future. Now I'm here to help you do the same. Join me as we navigate the real estate world together, building wealth and strengthening our families. As my grandma always said, East West, home's best.
Brian O'Neill, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm good. How are you?
Good. You're wearing a USA shirt, and I do know that you're an athlete slash runner slash fitness guy. Is that true?
I would say I used to be a little more than I am now. I mean, you can see it here if you're on video. I got a little extra weight on my face and chin than I used to.
Okay.
When I was single or just casually dating, and I basically just worked out, and hung out with friends and partied. So a lot of times those are the same people I hung out with, people I worked out with. So I got into triathlons a lot and did that kind of intensely and off and on, depending on what year it was and how busy I was with business. If it felt like a job, I would pull back from doing triathlon, but it was fun. It's competitive. You get to go fast. Cool people, it's kind of intense. It's kind of a mind game more than a physical game, in my
Absolutely.
opinion. So yeah, you probably saw that post I made recently online about a previous goal. I made it to the USA Nationals, but it's kind of a cool goal since it's in theory, the top 10% of triathlon people make
That's
it there.
awesome.
So yeah.
That's awesome. Brian, I'm going to put you in the hot seat right away, and I'm going to ask you, maybe seemingly a lifetime ago, you were bachelor mode, parties, workout, work, repeat, sleep for a few hours, do whatever. Now you're a father of two. What is one takeaway you've learned as a dad thus far in your life?
That is a deep one. What have I learned as a dad? I think most of the dads I know that have businesses or careers, it's not just a W-2 9 to 5. I think in the first few years, they definitely struggle with trying to keep things the same and just integrate your kids. If that makes sense. Like they still want to do the date nights and stay up late with their wife. And I think they kind of push back against that, becomes stressful. And I don't know, I think you just have to accept that your life is definitely going to be different, at least for a while when they're little. And I think you start to realize like how cute they are and how much do you like want to spend time with them.
Mhm.
And it's sort of it's just a priority change. I know it seems like when you're in it, everyone says that. And if you haven't had kids before, so I had kids way later than all my friends around me. All my friends around me out of college, got married, had kids. And in my opinion, they just looked miserable coming from the single guy who could do whatever he wanted. And I was just like, man, this looks horrible. Like you can't do anything you used to be able to do, and you can't hang out, and you're always tired, and things always get interrupted. And then you have kids, and it's fine. Like I can't do triathlon the way I used to. I can't go out late on a Friday night and get up in the morning and do whatever I want. Like, and I think it's just being okay with that and realize you're not giving something up. You're just shifting it for a while because, when they're 6 or 8, you can start to do some of those things again, but you just have to, in my opinion, accept that for the first 4 years of the kid's life, like your life revolves around them. And that's okay because I think you get halfway through it. Like my kids are 3 and 6. My 6-year-old, he's starting to turn like a boy now. He still wants to hang out with dad. But then I look at my 3-year-old, I'm like, oh, I only have like a year or 2 left where he's still like the cute cuddly baby, and I want it to go slower now. So
Mhm.
it's almost like when you first go into it, you want to get it over with, and like the diaper thing, the late nights. And I think you realize after you're halfway into it or more, like everyone says, you'll miss these moments, but you just have to accept that. I think accept that it's okay for your life to change for a while, and it's not forever, and you're gonna miss it later.
Well said. I have a 3 and 8-year-old. I'm drawing a lot of parallels in regard to my 8-year-old is, I mean, he's reading books, he's outside sort of doing things on a rope, likes to draw. Like there's things that he's doing that are somewhat independent. And part of me's like, oh, finally, like he's independent now. I don't have to sort of coddle him as much or be with him as much. And my 3-year-old is constantly asking me to play with her, build blocks with her, hold her. And to compare those two, it does make me, I'm thankful that my son is 8 and like we can do things that I can't do with my 3-year-old, but there is a little bit of that, like, oh yeah, he doesn't need me anymore as much as my 3-year-old does. So thanks for putting that
Yeah,
into perspective for us.
I used to tell my wife, like, I want our old life back. And it wasn't anything negative to our kids. I wanted what we have with our kids and our old life. And it's just not possible. And I think you have to just realize that. And it's a
Hmm.
transition. Like everyone says this. When I was in it, I remember people telling me this, oh, it's just transition. You'll get used to it. I'm like, well,
Hmm.
I don't want to get used to it.
Hmm.
You will, and you realize it's actually not a negative, and that you
Hmm.
you will look back and realize, oh, that actually was a good thing. You don't realize it when you're transitioning into it, but it
I
won't go
mean,
on forever. It feels like it's going to go on forever. When they're 1 or 2, it's like this is
hmm.
brutal. This is
Hmm.
gonna. You feel like it's going to go on forever, and then just like click, it changes, and you're like,
Hmm.
oh, it actually doesn't.
The days are long, the years are short. I'm actually in the same boat. There's times, I don't know if you feel the emotions you feel when you feel like time is moving too fast. I actually kind of get upset. Like I'm like, man, this isn't fair. Like I miss this previous whatever. But where I land eventually is I have got to make today count. Quit getting all sad or angry or whatever it is for like, missing these memories. Like now is the time that I have control over. Have you had sort of that moment?
That's funny. I come back to that sometimes. So we're both in Hunter Thompson's Raise Masters, and he really pushes about speed of execution, speed, 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 go quick, go quick, go quick. And I totally agree with that. Like for 15 years, I did that as an entrepreneur before I had kids and stuff.
Mhm.
But I actually told him this at a Raise Masters meeting when I talked to him a bit. I was like, there's a caveat to that. And this was before he had a kid. And I bet you he will
Mhm.
change his pitch on this a little bit. Is that there's a time to go fast and just push. And there's, I think, certain times in your life when it's okay not to. I really feel like that 0 to 4 with kids. If you follow Jordan Peterson at all, he points this out as well. It's like you only get 4 years with your kids in that period of their life. And it's very short and unique. And I think it's okay not to push, not to do all you can to build your business in those years or work a lot. Like I have a friend who's a dentist, and for those first 4 years, even though he was building his business, he really needed to work 5 days a week. He took off Wednesdays just because he knew his kids were only going to be little for a while, and he wanted more than 2 days a week to hang out with them. And I looked back at that before I had kids. I was like, okay, whatever, they're not going to remember anyways, Ryan. So like, why are you doing that? And it's like it was for him, and also for
Mhm.
his ability to nurture them during that time.
Mhm.
But
No, we're just
that just came to mind of just like it's okay if you're A type to slow down during these few years. You have plenty of times. Like I'm 42, have my kids about 40. I'll be 44, 45 by the time the kids are kind of a little older. I have 20 more years to step on the accelerator and do a bunch of stuff in business. Like
Mhm.
it's fine to not be doing a lot. And that's what I talked to Hunter about. It's like, like right now I'm choosing not to move quickly. I'm
Mhm.
choosing that. I don't want to work late at night to execute all this stuff and get it off the ground quickly. I'm going to do it as it works around my time with my kids and what I want to do for a few years. And that partly came for me off of just working like crazy for 15 years. I had 3 businesses and 100 employees, and it was just all work, work, work. I wasn't married. And when I sold everything and cashed out and sold to people and moved. I really just took 6 months off. Like I'm not going to work. I'm not going to do anything. I told people I was retired, and I made about 3 months until I started looking for something to do again. But that's when I kind of realized like I don't need to go as hard for a while. It's hard to pull back, but I will again at some point.
Yeah, I think that's where I wanted to really kind of dive in right here. 15 years entrepreneur, I mean, I didn't know that, 3 businesses, 100 employees. So there is this inside entrepreneurial go mode getting things done, productivity. You didn't have a family, it sounds like. And there's some gifts and skills and resources that you have that you are maximizing this part of your brain, this part of your life. What was the reasoning for selling everything? We just burnout? Like what happened?
Yeah, it was a mixture of things. I got engaged.
Okay.
So part of our sort of agreement, she wants to have a family and kids, and we're getting a little older.
Right.
And it's like, well, this isn't doable. I go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, the first construction business. It ends at 4. Between 4 and 5, I do whatever, eat, go do errands. And then from 5 to up to midnight on the weekends, I'd go work at the restaurants I owned and just repeat that. Like that's not doable. And it doesn't work with a family. She didn't want to do it as marriage. I was burnt out. I was like, I'm making a bunch of money and I'm so unhappy. But I just didn't know how do I adjust out of this? Because I built businesses just around myself instead of having them run without me. And of all things, restaurants and construction are not the easiest ones to just, set
Put on
managers and,
autopilot.
and go. We also were in California. It was 3 things. Like got married, we wanted to have kids, business was burning me out, and I didn't want to live in California anymore. Oh, I didn't want to employ people there. I didn't want to deal with the government. I was done. I was done dealing with California, and I just wanted out. The only way to get out is to sell. But we went all the way through escrow. We were literally, our foot was out the door, and COVID hit, and all our escrows fell out. So we got stuck there for actually 2 more years through COVID with restaurants and construction. But you want to talk, yeah. And we had kids at that point. So we did exactly what we didn't want to do, was have all these businesses and stress with kids, but it ended up being good in the end and we made it through. So that's another reason why I'm so adamant about not going crazy for these first 4 years with the kids with work-life balance. I have more life balance now, if you'd say. Like I should be working more, honestly.
Yeah.
And I don't, just because it sort of swung the other direction, the pendulum. We're slowly coming back.
I think let's talk about that because I actually even hate the term work-life balance. I think that's kind of like a myth.
The total myth.
I think when people hear that, they know what you're talking about, but I don't think that's an actual like real balance. Like, well, how many hours did you work this day? And how many times did you do life this day? Maybe you should even stop saying it. But that being said, I went through something kind of similar. I was working probably about 60 hours a week, not like what you did. Mine was a W-2 employee status. And when I learned about real estate, I started doing some things on the side while I was working my job. And when I left my W-2, I took about 6 months of just nothing. I think you said 6 months for you, but it ended up being more like 3 months. And helped out my wife. We had a baby. Just loved the idea of not working. Of course, not everyone can do that. There's bills to be paid and groceries to be bought. But you were in a position where you really did. I mean, you had 3 businesses. Hopefully you got some money out of that where you could say, hey, I don't need to work for a bit. I'm just going to figure life out, sort of set some priorities for me. Of course, escrow and the COVID, maybe disrupted that a bit. But I guess what I want to know is you resurfaced. Okay. Like you went into your cave, you decided, hey, or maybe the cave is a negative term. That's what I call it.
We moved into an RV and traveled around the country. That's
Okay.
what we did.
So it wasn't a cave, it was an RV. So you did that and something happened where you said, you know what, I still have this desire to build and work. Your family's there. So like you now have it's almost a brand new Brian O'Neill here. But as you've sort of come back and you've already talked about it in your key takeaway of the change and being okay with the expectations of the change, but give us what that's looked like in regards to like, what is the new Brian in light of time and priorities?
Yeah. So I tried to spend those 6 months or, whatever time I ended up using of those 6 months, really stepping out of my businesses and like, what was I good at? What was I bad at? What did I get better at that I think I should continue at? What am I just probably not good at and I should not do again or hire someone to do it? And then if I'm going to repeat this again, how do I take all that stuff I'm good at and stuff I like and find a business or whatever, the next venture that doesn't repeat the things that really made me not like working, if that made sense. Like I liked working, but I followed the typical E-myth where I just built things around me. And the reason I had 3 businesses, because every business I was trying to get out of that E-myth. I was like, okay, I tried it in my first business and then I tried revamping it, like just trying to adjust the business that's already running with the current employees that are like career employees and change the culture and the direction around it is very hard. because they've worked there for years. They're used to coming to you for answers. It's hard to get that ship to change. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go into a new venture with a buddy. Didn't work out so well. So now I have two businesses that rely on me. A little bit less, but then a third business, I literally didn't have keys to the door. I didn't have logins to the computers. I like did everything I could to where I can't even step into the minutia of this business. That's the closest I got. So I started to realize like I need to go that direction again.
Okay.
So anyway, six months go by. I'm like, okay, I need to do a business. This is before I looked into investing. I had, obviously gotten some big checks from selling these businesses, and I handed off to a financial planner because I just didn't feel, and I don't trust financial planners. But I was like, I've invested six figures, but like now we're talking like seven figures. Like I could screw this up. I was just doing the stock market and things like that, trying to stock pick like everyone, thinks they can do. Having some wins, having some losses, handed off to him. So the money thing was off to the side. I started looking at franchises. I was like, okay, that's a system that's built, it's been perfected. That's what I was sort of going for. So I was like, oh, I'll buy a bunch of Ace Hardwares or something. I don't know. I started looking at all these different franchises. Like I like tools. Like I'll do that.
I love that you're like, let's try
Yeah.
Ace.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. They don't make that much money, and they're kind of built around an owner operator. A lot of franchises are built around owner operator. You have to have like 5, 10 of them in order to be able to do that. So I started looking like, how do I? My metric was, how do I use business skills where I can sit behind the business? I didn't like being the face of the restaurants. I didn't like that as much. I'm an introvert. I had no problem walking around clearing tables, and they talked to me like I was the busboy. Restaurants are a very interesting place actually to work like that, where the way someone would treat me and talk to me, thinking I was the busboy, and then I could go to almost the exact same table, like, hey, I'm the owner. I had your dinner tonight, and their perception of you changes completely. It's very interesting. Not everyone, but some people, it's very interesting. They won't look you in the eye if you're the busboy, but they fall all over you if you say you're the business owner. Anyways, so my metric was I wanted the least number of employees possible. My first business I built up and had a bunch of employees, and I pulled it back down to just me and a few because I found it more efficient. I don't think I'm the greatest leader. People would say I am because I got these businesses through and I had 100 employees and I had low turnover, but I don't feel like my inherent skill is the emotional, figure out what everyone's driving force is. I was kind of raised by my dad of like, you go to work, you get it done, you do a great job for your own self-worth, and then you leave. Like, I don't need someone else to motivate me to do a good job. And I just have a hard time connecting with people that need that as a leader. I realize now I honestly should also pick a business if I have employees and tailor it towards people like that. Like, I don't have to hire people that need that. I can have a business where they connect with a leadership style like mine instead of me trying to adjust to them, and I'm not going to be good at it.
Let me go into the dad thing, because you mentioned your dad. I think that's key in this conversation. And I usually start that question earlier, but I feel like we just kept going in a good way. But tell me a little bit about your dad, and what was it like growing up under him? I
have one story. My dad's great, and like he's hold it against him. But I have one example, one of those core memories. Have you ever seen the kids movie? A core memory, Inside Out. Yeah. That's a great movie. If you watch it as an adult, there's a lot of adult topics in there, actually. I
agree.
I was in high school, probably freshman or sophomore year. I helped with the theater department build on the technical side, building things. I wasn't an actor. I like to build things. And I built this cool structure that was a bunch of like spindles and spools. All the cables that came off the sets all got wrapped in them. It was pretty good for a high schooler. It took me forever. He comes out and he looks at it. I'm like proud. I'm going to show it to him. We were building it in my garage and then to take it to the theater. And the spindle spools, they're round, but they come like you'd see them on the side of a road for like, wire comes on. I built my own. So I had to jigsaw them and stuff. He comes out, he just points out like, he notices some of the things that are good about it and goes like, that spindle's not perfectly round. It's like, that's my dad. If I went to a private high school, took AP classes, have a bunch of A's, B's, and there's a B- in there and something stupid, like, I don't know what class it was. And like, I'm proud of it. This is like my best report card ever. And he just looks at it and goes, what's with the B-? Like, geez, dad, like, that's my dad. So, I mean, he went to UC Berkeley, graduated in 3 years. They used to call him, his friends used to call him the neuron because he was always just wired and just go, 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 go. He's a smart dude for sure. But he was raised, his dad died when he was like 6, I think. So he was raised by my uncle, basically.
Okay.
And the O'Neills on the O'Neill side are just very A type, go, 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 intense people. So my uncle raised my dad raised us.
Yeah. No, that's
Perfection is expected.
got it.
And actually, it's the biggest source of my anxiety. I realized it's from being a kid. Like everything was always expected to be perfect.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
everything has to be like that is the standard. If you don't hit
Right.
perfect, you really didn't do a good job. And
Wow.
it's impossible to hit perfect all the time. He also worked a lot. He would go to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, come back at 6 or 7 at night. Like he was a dentist. Dentists don't work those hours. They don't need
Mm.
to. They make
Mm.
fine money. Like most dentists take Friday off and things like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And he was actually he was a specialist, so he did endodontics. But yeah, he was just intense. Intense would be the word in a loving, nice way, but just
Right.
go, 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 produce,
Right.
produce, produce. If he could do root canal in an hour and 15 minutes, everyone else took 2 hours. Like he was the guy that he
Okay.
was faster, better,
Okay.
just everything had to be the best. He also traded a ton of time for money because he wanted me to a dentist. So that's really why I went into business. I wanted to figure out how do I make money if I don't have to be at work all the time. I didn't realize the intricacies of what's involved to do that.
Hmm.
It started by looking at my dad, though. He goes to work, he gets paid. And it actually was when we would go on vacation, he'd be stressed
Mm.
because all his staff is still there. He's still paying them. He's still paying rent. He's burning money when he's on vacation. And I remember that as a kid of just like, I don't want to do that because every time he takes time off, he's stressed because he's actually losing money.
Mm.
So how do I do it where I can take time off and break even or make money? So that's why I went down the business path. Why I think I drove so hard to try to find that when I didn't find it in the first business and the second business and the third. And it still drives me today in my current view. I have more skills now to figure out how to do it. But
That's wild. No, that's really good. I feel like where we go here is, and this is the I asked that question. Someone said, the guest says what they say, and then the natural next question is, so what are you doing different from today? And you already kind of touched on it in regards to like the stress levels on vacation. I mean, expectations were sounds like as a kid, I love that story about the school thing because I could just tell you even describing it. You're like, this is a pretty cool thing. Like it was beyond, my capabilities
it's
at
the
the
best
time.
thing I had built
It's
till then. And I had built
you're
stuff since I was a little kid. I was building
yeah,
forts and all kinds of things.
like this is the shining moment. I could just see you hoping that dad would give you that pat on the back or wow, it looks good.
I was just like, I'm not showing
So,
him. And actually, I realized I shouldn't go to him for
mm,
that.
yeah. Core
I'm not going to
memory.
get that there. And I finally realized, like, that's not going to come from there because he had no clue.
Yeah.
He just, he's like, oh, we can make it better. We can make it better. And
Yeah.
I do that. I have to be
Yeah.
careful. I did it with my employees for years. They would
Hmm.
come in and I just walk through and point out the things in
Hmm.
construction. Like
Hmm.
I'm the guy who goes through that's wrong, that wrong, that's not level. This
Hmm.
is level. I'm like, I can see it in my eye. It's not level. And he puts a level on. It's off, but just a little bit. It's like, oh, I spent an hour and a half hanging that, and it's still not
Well,
level.
what 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 you just described is to some a huge strength. Like we need people to make it right. Like this job has to be done right. And then to others, oh, the feelings, like you totally destroyed this guy's he just quit because you didn't, say anything
Yeah.
nice about
So
your
like
life. So there's a
what
pro
my
and
dad
con.
didn't learn and what I have learned is how to present that information better. Yeah. The whole I won't use the word because it's a swear word, but the S sandwich, basically the good, put your criticism in the middle and then some more
There you
good.
go. There you
I
go.
start there. I've gotten better at it since then, but someone told me that once. I was like, okay, like I have my dad's qualities, so I have to figure out how do I blend those with the make it a little softer. So
Let's talk about your dad's qualities with your kids today. This is, I think, really helpful for dads today because we do come with baggage, if we would. Some people have a, wonderful childhood, but there's things that maybe they would have changed. And today you have a choice of like, hey, this is who I am. Of course, I'm part dad and married my wife and she loves this certain things about me. And now you're creating these little Brian O'Neills that are going to run around and build more spool things and buy 7 companies with 1,000 employees. As a dad, how are you raising your kids? What are the key values? And maybe if you could share a story of something that happened that kind of stood out to you as an example of that.
yeah, so we were in Hawaii last year, I think. My dad had a few gin and tonics and he started getting emotional. He's like, I should have spent more time with you guys. I shouldn't have worked this hard. I realize that now. Yeah, he still does it, by the way. He's retired and he still works his butt off and doesn't spend time with his family as much as he should. So he realizes it can't change. But he realized that. And I think us as dads in this generation, though, we have the good thing about social media is you see lots of perspectives on people's how they raise their kids, and there's perspectives on what's important to where you're not just exposed to what the family you're directly around. Like
Mm.
if in the 80s is like you knew your uncle, your dad, the next door neighbor. That was your examples of how you raise kids, basically. Well, now you can get all these other perspectives. The being in the moment thing, I know it's hard for me because my brain's always thinking, but how important that is to kids is like when you're with them to be with them. And everyone you hear that, you see it on little memes on social media, but actually doing it, like kids connect with that. And like I'll admit, I have a hard time doing it, but I at least know I should be. You would say the fact that you know what you need to be doing has helped our generation a bit. It puts a little more stress on being a parent because you know all these things you're supposed to be doing and what can or can't mess your kid up or make them better. Really trying to just, and it's hard. Like, don't have your phone, don't watch TV, like just live in their world. Realizing like I have two boys, and when they hit like 3 or so, like they just want to be with you. Like they are attached to you. Like my son yesterday told my wife, like, I just want time with dad alone without brother. So I take him out and do that and realize that that's a stage in life he really needs. And that I hope it's helping. I mean, the fact that everyone says it's a stage, you definitely should do it. What else am I doing with my kids? I think from my own self experiences when I was little, like I think self confidence and self worth are more important than being good at a skill or things like that.
Amen.
My kids, when they're young, do not need to be great at sports. They don't need to be perfect at speaking. They just need to have confidence and drive to keep going, basically. Like, this is where we can teach them, like, you don't give up. You need to keep going at it. Like, those foundational skills. I think gets missed with, oh, you have to be perfect at reading at this certain age, or you need to do these sports. And if you're not as good as them, like, I try to insulate them from that a little bit because I don't think it's good. I don't think it's a good part of society. I think it affected me, obviously.
Yeah.
And I just try to, that's probably number one. And I'll be aggressively protective about it. My stepmom is wonderful, but we call her the German, my dad's wife. She likes things to be good and you should be good at this. My son was playing t-ball at their house and he's not swinging it right. He's holding the bat backwards, but he's loving it. Like he's loving it. I showed him the correct way to hold it, and he did it once or twice. He went back the other way, and they really wanted to correct him. Like, no, if you're gonna do it the right way. And I tell him like, no, this isn't the time for that. This is the time for him to just be confident in trying something new and not worried about if he's doing it right or not.
Interesting.
That's probably my number one thing with him right now. We homeschool our kids too, by the way.
Yeah.
To be able to control some of these aspects as well. So.
Yeah, we're a homeschool family. Love that story, actually. That's a really interesting. My son, 8, very similar. There's things that, well, I don't know if your kids struggle with self-confidence. Mine does for sure. There's, we race or, he's on a scooter, I'm running on like, sandals, and I beat him because I've also learned that if I let him win too many times, it is hurting him because now I can never let him, I can never beat him because then he just falters. And
he needs to be okay with failure or not winning or struggles.
I like the way you put it. It's more important to have that self-confidence and enjoyment than actually doing the skill 100% correctly. I totally agree with that. There may be people out there that says, well, if you can't do it right, don't even do it. But I think each kid has their own recipe of like what they need. And as a dad, you need to pick up on that.
And they'll get there on the skill. And this isn't trophies for everyone. I'm like so against that as well. Right. This doesn't mean that like everyone's great. This is just a core. When they're little, they're not going to be good at it. Like what's the point of beating them up over it? Like as long as they continue with it and continue trying, continue struggling and ask for help when you need it. But it's just the constant critiquing I don't think helps.
Brian, we're just about out of time. I want to make sure you have a platform here to say something that maybe I didn't ask about, or I don't know. We're just getting a snapshot of your personal life. I know we could have dove into your businesses and the exits and how you built it and everything. We'll end with that final remark, Dad. And then also, if our audience could track you, see what you're up to, learn a little more about you, direct us in that way.
Okay. Well, I'll do that part real quick. My company is Passive Capital Partners. You can Google that or also business2wealth.com. You can spell it however you want. It gets you there. My key demographic is business owners like me who have exited or sold their businesses and are trying to figure out their next step in life. I have gone to private money lending, and I do commercial real estate investing passively as well as buying projects. I give myself more flexibility and freedom. These are businesses I can't be involved in day to day. That's why I focus on like apartment complexes and things like that, or loaning money for private money loans to people. They're doing the work day to day, and I'm managing the numbers and the finances. So that's how I transitioned from my next career. And it helps as a dad. I can work when I need to. I can step away when I don't. And it's the true flexibility I was looking for. And that's sort of where I'm at. Final thought on being a dad.
Or maybe a resource. I mean, I feel like you're a very smart guy to build these businesses. Has there been, and you mentioned a few names earlier, Jordan Peterson. I'm probably editing that
Jordan
out.
Peterson. Yeah.
But
If you haven't heard Jordan Peterson, I mean, he'll have a definitely conservative, more traditional view on, he'll comment on politics and life, but he's out of Canada and he's some version of clinical psychologist, but he travels and does talks as well, but a lot of opinions and talks on children, boys and girls, raising them, life lessons. He's just a very well thought out. He really thinks deep about things, and he's not like a typical psychologist. He's like I'll just check him out. It's hard to describe who Jordan Peterson is, but you can probably tell my views in the last 30 minutes on life and how things should be in politics and living. He's a great resource to really make you think about raising kids and psychology and just what works, what doesn't, how to build good adults, basically, would be one of his things. He really talks to the youth. The youth are really struggling in these generations, the ones that are currently 16, 17, 12, and really talks to them. He actually has a large part of his audience is boys and males in that age group looking for identity and looking for like why they call me toxic masculinity and like things that have been distorted of just like what it's okay to be a driven guy and it's okay to have certain qualities and skills, and you don't need to be a soft, everyone gets a trophy type guy, and that's okay. And he kind of talks to that.
Another question, final question. What would help our nation today if dads could do something different? Or, is there a problem that you see that, hey, if all the dads listening to this out here could do this, put this into action, then this nation would be a better place. Any thoughts on that?
Well, maybe a side comment to that would be, I can't remember who stated it. I can't remember if it's Jordan Peterson or not, but it's basically comes down to the quote was, moms nurture kids and build them up and create them and get them ready for the world, and dads bring them into the world and make them prepared to deal with it. And I think the dad part of that may have been lost some, that the lessons that dads teach their kids and like pushing them and driving them, I don't want to say the hard knocks, but getting them ready for the real world. And you can do that in a tailored, smart way. And I think, the way we used to do it was just kind of like, figure it out, kid. And, just a tough love type thing. And I think we swung the other direction to being too soft and no tough love and not really preparing kids for what's needed out there. I think that's dad's primary responsibility. Moms obviously do it as well, but like you need to see that as a dad, like that's your job. Like you love them and you build them up, but you're also the one that pushes them into the real world and prepares them for it. And I think dads need to focus on that more.
Love it. Brian, thanks so much, man. Thanks for taking the time to talk today. And to all my invested fathers out there, I want to encourage you to continue to love your children, speak with them. And just like Brian was saying, I think there's a way to say it gently and carefully, but to be their biggest fan and to push them to face hard times.
Thanks, Kenny.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Invested Fathers podcast. If you liked this episode, we would love for you to click subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate all of your hard work as a father and look forward to our next episode together.